The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hi, this is Barbara Davis from United Arts in St. Paul, and I'm here today talking to author Susan Lowell, who's the author of Ganado Red, a book published by Milkweed Editions, a small press located in Minneapolis. Susan, we're glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Susan is here to do a reading at the Walker Art Center, and while she's here, she consented to spend a little bit of time with us. Susan, anyone who's read this book, it becomes very clear that you are based in Arizona and in the Southwest, and that's a very important part of the world for you. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's so important to you?
On both sides of my family, my Southwestern relatives go back 4 generations, and it's always been home, although I've moved around a good deal. We've always come back to Arizona. So that's the essence of it. I didn't realize until I got over 30 how this is where my material as a writer was probably located.
Well, it certainly comes clear that the whole landscape speaks very, very, very strongly to you. Tell us about the title, Ganado Red. And the word ganado is not something that means something to me.
No. In Spanish it means cattle. It's also the name of a small town in northern Arizona on the Navajo reservation. And the town was actually named for an Indian, an important Indian. The Navajos don't really have chiefs, but an important and well-off Indian who had a great many cattle. And his name in Spanish was Tiene mucho ganado, which means he has a lot of cattle. And his Anglo friend, an Indian trader, named this little town where he built a trading post for his Indian friend, the man with a lot of cattle. This is a very long story.
So the town became Ganado.
The town got shortened to Ganado, and it is still there.
Okay, and Ganado Red?
Well, the particular trader I was talking about sponsored fine weaving in his area, encouraged the women to become better weavers. And for one thing that he did was have an artist paint a series of pictures of beautiful old rugs from the 19th century, and he would show them to the weavers to inspire them. And he also felt that the quality of the dye that they were using in the rugs was not strong enough. Red dye has a tendency to fade out anyway. And so he told them, when they dyed their wool red, to use a double quantity of the dye. I believe it was Ritz or Coates and Clark's. You can see in the records for the trading post how he would order vast quantities of dyes to sell to the women. And he told them to make a special really dark red for their rugs so that it would hold up and it would really be a strong design element. And over time, his rugs, the rugs from his area, not his rugs, became famous, and they are called by their color. That's a Ganado Red rug.
That's a Ganado Red, okay, well. Then that brings us to the title story in the book, which is called Ganado Red, and it's about the creation of a Navajo rug and its fate as it passes from one owner to another. Tell me, I'm curious why you decided to base a story about a thing as opposed to a person. Often it's the other way around.
Well, I guess it all started, my husband and I went to this old trading post, which is still functioning right now. And we bought, in the late 1970s, when we really couldn't quite afford it, a Ganado Red rug. And I began, although I had grown up with Navajo rugs in the house, and I'd taken them for granted, I'd never really known that much about them. I started getting interested in the history and so forth. And I decided that somehow the idea for a story came to me, one story about a rug, and then I thought, well, we could take this a little further on. But I decided that I didn't want to carry the characters as far as you do in a novel. I don't know exactly why. I think it was partly that I sort of set myself some assignments when I was writing. And I decided to write a short novel or novella in units, each of which would stand alone, so they could be published alone.
Aha, okay.
It
Good
was-
practical reason.
It was partly pragmatic. I was hoping to publish as they went along. But it was also kind of a challenge to make it all self-explanatory. You can't really lift a chapter out of a novel usually
Yeah.
without explanation. But in this case, I hope that they each stand alone. But I also hope that you can read them in series without its being
Yes.
obvious in the other direction.
Yes, yes. Well, I think
So-
you can. I think you
Well,
can.
anyway,
It was very
that-
interesting.
It was for my own entertainment
Yeah.
in some
Yeah,
ways.
yeah. The rug became a personality. It
Yes.
seemed to acquire more spiritual characteristics as it moved through time.
I started thinking about the lives that objects have, in a sense, how they outlive us, and the things that you make or do last past your own time.
That's right. And that's the nice
So-
nature of art, in a sense.
Yes, that's true too.
And the story begins with the artist who creates the rug and ends with an artist who owns the rug
That's right.
and its impact on her art.
That's right.
Yeah, it was a wonderful
well,
story.
thank
I
you.
enjoyed it.
Thanks.
And you brought with you today a
did.
Ganado red rug.
I brought with me the first one that we ever bought.
This is the one you were talking about that you
Yes.
bought when you couldn't afford it.
That's right.
Those are very special things.
Yes, that's right. You're always glad you did it. But
Yes, it hurts.
anyway, this is a contemporary Ganado red rug. This is the color, the red, and they're usually red, black, gray, and white. Sometimes indigo blue instead of black. But it's a fairly simple set of colors. They almost always have a black border and a central design element of some sort. This is being small is not as complicated as they sometimes are. And they another aspect of the rug that's kind of interesting is, which relates to the last story.
Yes.
As I was writing the last story, I had a great deal of trouble finishing it. There was something missing, I felt, even when Milkweed Editions was ready to publish the book.
Oh, it was still in process.
You're never supposed to do this. But I changed it in proof, and they were extremely kind. I had at the very end the last owner look at the rug and discover something in it that she had never seen before. And at first it was a little element in the design. But that always worried me because I felt that she should have seen that it wasn't right. So I decided to make it what's called a spirit line, or the weaver's pathway. The southwestern Indians don't like to have a design totally closed. They feel that there's something deathly about any design that's too perfect. And it's not so much that there are evil spirits in it. It's that the weaver or the potter needs to have a way out of that enclosure into her next project, or something bigger and better, or some release into everyday life. So I decided I would put one of these pathways in the rug in the story, though I half didn't believe that they were true in my own heart. I didn't think we had any in our own rugs. And then when the book was published, a television crew came to my house and put lights on my rug, and I saw, behold, lo and behold, there was a weaver's pathway in this very rug.
And you'd never seen
and
it
I had
before.
never seen it before, like my character. And it's right in this corner, a little red line running through the black to the outside of the rug.
It's very, very faint, but it's definitely there, isn't it?
I have since learned sometimes they are totally invisible. The weavers do it. It's for the weaver. It's not for the purchaser or for any real religious purpose. It's the weaver's own...
A way of saying goodbye, maybe?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And the Navajos consider that you can become sick if you weave too much without making your life balanced.
That's very interesting.
You shouldn't sit all day at the loom.
You shouldn't become obsessive about your art form. That's very interesting.
So
I noticed in the story when the weaver, the first chapter, the weaver sells her rug to the trader, there's not a moment where she feels a pang about saying goodbye. She's already thinking about her next project, her next rug. And she's totally involved in that immediately. And that was very interesting to me.
Well, I think that's true. I've never really known a Navajo weaver closely enough to want to pry too much, because it is like any artist. Sometimes they don't want to talk about what they do. But also, it's a major source of income, and she would be happy to have the money.
Yeah.
And she would be wanting to lay in her supplies for the next project. So
Great. I understand this is the first book that you've published.
Yes.
So you have published some short stories?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Have you been writing for a long time, or is this
All
a
my
recent
life.
endeavor? All your life?
No, I have written much of my life. I've worked as a newspaper reporter. I think all writing is basically the same. Even when you write a letter, it's something that you're creating. It doesn't matter. Even a grocery list, in a sense, you have to put it in an order. And I studied creative writing as far as you can study it, I guess, in college. But when I got out of college, I didn't write for quite a long time. I was discouraged, in a sense. I didn't feel I could do what I wanted to do. So I put it aside until I was about 30, 8 or 9 years ago, and I'd had a child, and I was at home. And I thought, this is the time. So I started again without any expectations, particularly. So.
And what do you think, besides having maybe a little less busy schedule, though having a small child doesn't seem like the most relaxed time in someone's life, what made the difference for you, that feeling of discouragement that you had when you were younger? What enabled you to overcome that?
Well, every writer's different, every person's different. I think it has to do with having experience and knowing what you want to write about. For me, also, we had come home to Arizona. I didn't realize that at the time, but I think maybe that was part of it. I got back to a place that I really knew, and it made me confident or something that I could write about it.
And how long have you been living in Arizona this time around?
9 years now.
9 years? And where in Arizona are you living?
Tucson, Arizona, in southern Arizona, in the desert.
In the desert. Okay. And you say you come from a long line of ranchers. Do you aspire to have a vast ranch of your own?
It's like the family farm. The family ranch is a very difficult thing to keep going these days. My parents and my cousins have ranches still. And my husband and I own a small ranch that has never been an economic proposition for anyone who's ranched it. Right now we don't have any cows on it. But it's a lovely place.
It's a lovely place.
And we would hate to see it turned into something that was not lovely.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you brought a picture of that with you, I believe. Yes.
The ranch is at the foot of a mountain, which is called Babakivari Peak. And to the Papago Indians, or the Tohono O'odham Indians, it's the center of their universe. A good O'odham must live in some place where he can see Babakivari Peak. If he goes or she goes out of that area, when he comes back, there has to be a purification. I mean, this is the old religion, but it was an intense center landmark.
And do you feel some response to the mountain yourself?
There is something special about it. It's got there's a lot of folklore and mythology, some having to do with mountain climbing, because it's an interesting climb.
And you can't climb it without violating the mountain or the
yes,
spirit?
On the Indian reservation side, there is a sacred cave which no one can go to without their permission, which is supposed to be the entrance into a labyrinth, which is in the center of the mountain. And at the very center of the labyrinth, the creator of this tribe of Indians lives. His name is Toy, which means elder brother. And, and you're not supposed to disturb him unless you have permission.
Okay, sounds like a bit of a threatening authority figure.
He is a bit. He's a mixture. He's not totally benign. But he comes out occasionally and saves somebody or does perform some feat, and then he retreats back into this maze in the middle of the mountain.
Yes.
But the climbers go up the other side.
Up the other side, okay. One of the things that I noticed about many of your stories and that I really enjoyed was that they seem to be taking place at an intersection of many different cultures. The Indians, the Mexicans, the whites, interacting with each other in a variety of ways. It seems to give the stories more cultural depth than a lot of the things that I read. Is that an important part of your
I hope
life?
that's true, because I think that's what I'm trying to do. It may be true that people who've lived in an area longer have more sense of the different ethnic groups and cultures that live there. It's probably just whether it appeals to you or not. But it is true that's an area where there are some rather different groups mixing, and each changes the other to some extent.
Yes, yes. In I'm thinking of the story Los Mojados, where there is a white family ranching, and they encounter some Mexican farm workers, and they infect each other very intensely. There's a definite feeling of belonging to each other and yet not quite.
It's kind of a tragic situation in some ways. In others, not. Our country is a sort of beacon of hope to these people who are so poor, and yet it is illegal to come across the line without the right papers. So, and then these people need charity, but at the same time, in their hierarchical culture, their way of being friendly to someone who has more money is to attach themselves to you. So you become their patron or patroness. And that's a very demanding relationship. It's a whole set of cultural norms that we're not totally familiar with.
And it seems as though the whites, at least in this story, want to keep them a bit more at arm's length. They don't.
Well, there's also the problem of crime.
Yes.
It's very complex. It's very explosive.
Yes, it is.
And then in our part of the world, we have a serious drug smuggling problem too, which doesn't enter much into that story, but it certainly does into our daily lives. There's a real underworld, and terrible things happening with regularity.
Yeah.
So.
You use the term underworld. One of my favorite stories in the collection is the first one, White Canyon. And I think the reason I like it is because one almost has the feeling of being sucked into the underworld of someone else's consciousness. It almost had a feeling as though it were being imagined by someone in a slight fever. It has a slight hallucinatory quality to it. Could you tell us sort of how you manage, where that voice comes from, that point of view, something about that story?
That story goes from between the past and the present.
Yes.
And the main character is someone who is ill, and remembering her past as she is ill. I guess what I was trying to do is use some aspects out of my own life. When I was a little girl, we did live in southern Utah at the time they were doing testing of the atomic bombs and scattering fallout all over the four corners. But the story's not totally true. I changed a number of things. But I thought it was interesting material because there is some danger to it.
Definitely, definitely. When you talk about, in the beginning, the family is so carefree. They seem so innocent, this young family, a mother, a father, 2 children. They're living in this trailer, and the father is a geologist, and yet there's all these signs that now, today, we know are dangerous. And talking about the white beef jerky the beef jerky that's got white powder on it, like the
fallout.
Like the fallout. And you think, don't eat that. And yet there they are. They're so innocent, and they don't know. It's like watching someone sort of walk to their doom in a way, carefree. Very
well,
terrifying.
that was true. Although, it's in comparison with something like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it's not. I have some friends who testified in the trial when the victims of that fallout, or their parents, children, had an unusually high rate of leukemia in those areas. When it came to trial, the doctors got up on the stand and said, well, it's only twice as common. Leukemia is only twice as common here as normally. And after the atomic bomb went off in Japan, it was 17 times as common. So it's a matter of degree. But from the fiction writer's point of view, you're looking for plots and you're looking for complications.
Yes.
So
well, that was one that
you look for it.
Certainly worked for me.
Well, thank you.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed
Glad
that story. I'm interested, too, in talking briefly about another story, which is also episodic, a bit in the way that the story Ganado Red is, and that's the one called, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, about the wild pigs.
Oh, the javelinas.
Javelinas. It's a fascinating story where it's just little bits from the lives of various people living in the Tucson area, but the thing that's holding them together here is not the rug, but these wild pigs that dash into someone's life and dash out again. It's a fascinating story. These pigs take on almost mythic significance after a while.
They do. One of the odd things about writing is that it gets out of your own control sometimes. And you look back at it and see that something happened that you didn't really plan, or at least maybe not on the surface of your mind. Those pigs are real. I mean, they do live in the desert. I think they live from Texas to maybe Southern California, and then farther south. And they're very ugly, but kind of like warthogs or wild boar. They're powerful and strange. They also smell very bad.
Yeah,
but they do get into neighborhoods. They're kind of fearless.
yeah.
And I thought it would be a link.
And everyone responds to them in his own way or her own way.
Different
very
ways.
intensely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to make, in that story, kind of a miniature novel. Boil it way, way down. Some of the people who read it thought that it didn't work, and some thought that it did. So that's experiments for you.
Yeah. One of the things I liked about it was that we had the feeling that we were dropping into people's lives in progress, and that it was going, those pigs were going to push those lives in just a slightly different direction. They were going to be propelled onward to something that you could maybe guess at but would never know. It was very interesting.
I suppose that's true. You put it so well.
Going back again to the story Ganado Red, it's a story that has 4 or 5 chapters, I believe. 5 chapters, beginning with a chapter in 1920 when the old Navajo woman weaves the rug. Then the next 2 chapters, the chapter entitled 1924, the sisters, the collectors, are the first ones to really buy the rug. And then the following chapter, 1980, The Castle of the Fairy Queen, takes us to another trading post operator in a way who buys the rug from the sisters' estate after the sisters die. Those 2 chapters, the 1924 and the 1980, both evoked for me very strongly certain periods of American history. The 1924, the old Southwest that we read about when D.H. Lawrence was there, and Taos, and a certain part of American artistic life. And then in the next chapter, though it's entitled 1980, I thought very strongly of the 1960s, the late 60s, early 70s, as I had known it, growing up, being a young woman. Tell me, were those 2 time periods particularly evocative to you? What caused you to choose those eras?
Those 2 probably grew out of trips that I've made to visit friends in Santa Fe. And Santa Fe is, I suppose, in some ways, a time capsule of the 60s, and maybe of the 20s, too. Those were 2 peak times. I happened to stay in a house that had belonged to 2 old sisters, and we heard some legends about them, some of which I used in that story. They had collected Indian art, but they were not nearly as neurotic, I think, as my characters.
Yes, they were really far gone.
They were. And then I used some materials from another house that we visited in the Castle of the Fairy Queen story. And one of the themes that runs through the novella is houses. Different people's houses and how they reflect the personalities of the people.
Yes, yes. The Castle of the Fairy Queen, it sounded like some places I lived in 68, 69, with the candles and the incense and the dying plants and the dirty kitchens and the long dresses and
That's right.
the
Well,
whole
these people are
business.
still caught there
They
in
definitely
the
are
70s.
caught, very much caught.
So
Yeah.
that story also has an underpinning of a theme out of medieval and Renaissance romance, where the knight visits a dangerous island or castle run by some wicked witch, and he has to escape
with his
with his
talisman,
talisman.
the rug. Yes, that's right. He almost loses himself and the rug. That's right. That's right. Very interesting.
That's my graduate education. in
Yes,
English.
showing up. Yes, you have to use it somehow.
You hope you can.
Yeah. Are you working on anything now?
I'm working on a piece of nonfiction right now, which I used, the materials I used for a short story that's in the book. And then I decided, when I got to know them better, there's some family papers, that they really deserve to be treated as the truth, as nonfiction. So that's what I'm doing, is writing. I guess the simplest way to describe it is a memoir of one of my great-grandmothers, who came to Arizona as a new bride in 1895, and what happened before and after she arrived.
And came from?
She came from London.
From London.
And she was 40 years old.
A new bride at
Yes.
40 coming to Arizona.
Yes.
Boy.
And she kept a diary, fortunately.
She kept the diary. Oh, how wonderful that
Yeah,
must be
it
to
is.
have the words.
It's interesting. It really is. It's very touching.
Yes.
So, and we also have a run of love letters between her and her fiance or her friend as they start out. They're quite formal at the beginning because they conducted their courtship entirely by letter. And then she came over after 6 years of letter writing and married him, not having seen him for 6 years.
Seen him.
And they really did not know each other all that well. It's
My.
extraordinary.
That's going to be an extraordinary story.
Yes.
How does your family feel about you digging up the past like this?
Well, good, I think. My grandfather, who was their son, felt he really didn't want to talk about it. So we really didn't want to do anything with them until after he died. But at the same time, he saved his papers and cared for them and referred to them as source materials.
Yeah.
So
he did not want to bury the past.
Oh,
he
no.
just didn't want to
No,
talk
it
about
was painful for him because his mother had died when he was quite young. And
Yeah.
when he remembered her, it was a source of pain.
Well, this book that you have published has, for the small press world, certainly taken things by storm.
Oh, it's been wonderful.
I
They've
can
been
imagine.
so good to me.
Publishers Weekly suggested that the book was one of the 15 best paperbacks of 1988, and I understand
Nice.
that
I don't know about that.
that as of July 1989, they've sold 6,000 copies and are going to print 3,000 more.
Well, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I think small presses are just a marvelous new development. Not so new, really, but.
So has this sudden, I won't call it maybe fame, but at least success changed your life?
Well, in a moderate way, yes, it certainly has. It's after so many years of being an aspiring writer, to be a real writer is quite a change. I guess I'm real.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You look real to me.
It doesn't feel all that different.
Yeah,
Actually.
yeah.
But
Do you find yourself more in demand, say, to give talks or lectures, or?
in a modest way,
Yeah.
yes. It's been wonderful to learn how many women's book clubs there are in the world. To think of all those women out there reading books because
Yes.
they've invited me to come
Yeah, yeah.
and talk.
Well, perhaps after hearing you talk today, some more women's book clubs and readers of all kinds will be inspired to go out and get Ganado read. I enjoyed
It
reading
would be a thrill.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Susan Lowell, for being with us today, and thank you for joining us.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.